The first presentation of this series is called The Velvet Cape. The second presentation of this series is called Boats and Bodies. So if you haven't seen those two presentations yet, please take some time and go and see them. The content of this third presentation draws from them, so it will be not just easier but more profitable for you if you see the ones I've mentioned before. In this picture, we have what you already know. We have the little children from Nagasaki, Dosamachi neighborhood, dressed like Namban, performing in the Okonchi Festival, which is a festival held on Suwa Shrine and many different parts of Nagasaki city. They are holding a flag. It's not a flag of Nagasaki city, neither Japan. It's a flag of Portugal. It's the official flag of the Republic of Portugal. In this presentation, I will address not only the relation between body and these kind of performances, symbols and archetypes, but I will also address the issue of national symbols of Portugal and the relation with Portugal or things from Portugal that festivals in Japan that are about the history of Japan tend to use in order to emphasize that what they mean is to tell their specific story. So it's kind of strange. Why would they try to tell the story of a particular place, a particular community, using symbols of other country, of other languages, foods, dress, and so on? It's a kind of essentialization. I'm not sure if in English it's said like that. When you want to define the culture of a particular community, a particular place, you want to focus on what is essential, what is fundamentally different in that community. And sometimes you go to the essential and to the fundamental to the point of choosing symbols that are kind of odd because they are opposite or outside of the national symbols. It's not a region versus the nationality, but it's definitely a region trying to tell its own history within the history of nationality. And in these southern areas of Japan, it's particularly evident, especially in Nagasaki, Ken, so it's the province of Nagasaki, not just the city of Nagasaki. In the province of Nagasaki, it's particularly evident that they're trying to tell the story of their past, their identity, through the story they shared with Portugal in a period of time that was the late 16th and 17th century. So these children are on Suwa Shrine. And what is Suwa Shrine in Okonchi? I will not have time to explain everything here, but I'll try to address the issue, at least what is mandatory for us to understand the rest. Suwa Shrine is a Shinto shrine, and the Okonchi festival is, of course, a Shinto festival. It's considered that the first Okonchi festival was held in the late 30s of the 17th century, and it was established by the Bakufu, or the governor of Japan at the time. In this picture, and this is a picture from Meiji era, so from 19th century, in this picture we can see that Okonchi was a very big festival in the city of Nagasaki, that hundreds, even thousands of people went to see performances, not just at Suwa Shrine, but all around the city. So what happened between 17th century and the time in which this photo was taken? From 1614, being a Christian in Japan became harder and harder. From difficult to painful to potentially a cause of your torture and death. In 1630s, the Christians were already persecuted. throughout Japan. Most of them fled south. The more the south they went, the more they find communities of Christians that choose to go under and became hidden Christians, kakure Kirishita. Some of them had the help of hidden missionaries from many different religious orders, but most of them Jesuits. So both Japanese people, some Japanese priests, and some Western missionaries under the Jesuit orders went kakure, went under, not to be persecuted or died, but some of them eventually were. Anyway, the southern Japan became the place to which people fled when they wanted to preserve their Christian faith. So areas like Ikitsuki, Goto Islands, Hirado Island, and Nagasaki area became the place with the biggest concentration of Christians in Japan. And the local governments were also changing. The way these areas were ruled was also changing because the Bakufu, the Bakufu was establishing himself as the only national head of the whole state of Japan. It was a completely new idea, Japan being a unified state. And so the Bakufu government wanted these places to be under control and to make sure that only the national state was the one in charge of what was happening around here, and not other nationalities, other orders, other forces, local lords turned into Christians and having their own agendas and so on. So in this triangle, in this area where the biggest concentration of Christians were at the time, many measures were taken in order to control them, suppress them, and eventually eradicate them. The Shimabara Rebellion is well known in the history of Japan. Nagasaki City saw a set of measures in order to try to clean the cultural environment of the city from the Christian influence. Living in Nagasaki in the late 16th century was living in a Christian city where foreign languages were spoke out loud everywhere in the street, and where different ethnic communities lived side by side, not without problems. And but anyway, the presence of foreigners was even stronger than the presence of Japanese, because there was not just the Portuguese, there were also Spanish people, there were also Koreans, Chinese, people from all around Southeast Asia, Indians also coming from the Portuguese boats. So the Bakufu in Nagasaki tried to establish a festival which was a way to unify the city under the Bakufu. And the best way to unify the city was acknowledge that the city had different neighborhoods, but also acknowledge that there were interests that could go along with the ones from the Bakufu and against the Christians. And these allies were some Buddhist monasteries and some Buddhist monks, the quarters from the prostitutes and the brothels, and also the Shinto shrines. And after some churches have been burned down and the Christians have been persecuted, a festival was created which was Okunchi, in order for every neighborhood to invest their time, their effort, and their money in order to participate in this festival, and because of that to focus themselves on their civilian and religious life instead of focusing themselves into hiding Christians or being Christians themselves. Besides taking a festival from a Shinto shrine and turn it into the official festival of the whole city with different neighborhoods participating, besides that, the Bakufu also supported an initiative taken by 25 merchants of Nagasaki City. those merchants, they put together enough money to build a ghetto, so artificial island that was then known as Dejima, the island, basically, or something like that in Japanese. And the Portuguese in Nagasaki, they used to live among the population of the city, but then they had to move to this artificial city, and the relations between Nagasaki citizens and Portuguese became much more formal and separated. The Bakufu wanted to clearly separate the different ethnicities and especially to put order in the foreigners. Dejima Island was not the only artificial island that was created in order for a different ethnic group of merchants to establish themselves, to live and to put their merchandise. Another one was a place for the Chinese. So the island of Dejima was created in 1634, and this is around the same time in which I changed some of the previous image, and I highlight that the area the Portuguese had their headquarters it used to be in the mainland, meaning in the southern part of Nagasaki, because the map is upside down. And it was the yellow part that was the part where the Jesuits had their headquarters and where the merchants would go in a parade to meet the Jesuits, the parade that is so well depicted on the Namban. The light blue areas were the areas in which the boats would approach Nagasaki. So Nagasaki port was not exactly as a straight line, because you would enter the bay by the right side. You will go back all the way to the bay, which is narrow and surrounded by mountains, and then you will turn slightly to your left and come to these areas that I highlight in light blue. So two ways of entering Nagasaki city were either by this port area or by the main land entrance, which is highlighted in the gray arrow up in the picture, left side up. So by changing the connections with the outside world, they also changed the spatial dynamic of Nagasaki. D for Dutch and C for Chinese are the artificial islands in which the foreigners were established. So things would have to approach these areas, and they have to enter the city of Nagasaki through different mediums. They will have first to go to these areas and then to be counted and taxed. And after all the taxation and inventory, things will go into the mainland of Nagasaki through bridges and doors, and not directly as entering a port has before. So this eventually, people said that Nagasaki was the only open port to the west from the Tokugawa shogunate up to the end of Edo period. Well, it's not exactly like that. As you can see, this is not an open city. This is a port in which some openness is allowed, but completely supervised and strict. But anyway, yes, exactly, it was possible, but it's not an open port. The open port ended in 1641. The success of the Okunchi festival might have something to do with the fact that Nagasaki inhabitants and Nagasaki governors perceive themselves as a different city in the context of whole port cities of Japan. They were much more influenced by foreigners. Their population was much more mixed, and the presence of Christians in Nagasaki or around areas of Nagasaki prefecture was everlasting, even if they were Kakure Christian. And there were different aspects also in terms of food, of language. For instance, the local dialect of Nagasaki had a lot of words coming from Portuguese language, and people didn't forget those times once things were forbidden, they just didn't erase their memories. So they had to keep the notion that Nagasaki had to be a Japanese city, even though it had so much of foreignness within its own culture. So a way to enact that was through okunchi and through the different performances. But the neighborhoods performing with boats and the neighborhoods telling their own history, this is not something that happened during this whole time. So it was only introduced in 19th century. It is considered the Meiji era, the Meiji Revolution, to have introduced also this change. So the festivals used to participate, the neighborhoods used to participate in the festival, having their own omikochi or having their own kasaboko, which were ways also to parade on the streets and to pay respect to the divinity, but they were not parading in the sake of their own identity or their own story or their own neighborhood. This is something that was only introduced in the 19th century. In this picture I have Miss Yamaguchi, which is the curator of Dejima, because Dejima is now a museum and also an archaeological site and also a theme park. And she's pointing at a map in which it is clear that we have a white part and a red part, and the white part of this map was the part in which the old towns of Nagasaki were created in 1571, and the red parts of the map were the outer neighborhoods of Nagasaki, which were created anyway short afterwards. So Uchimachi and Sotomachi, the group of the neighborhoods from within and the group of the neighborhoods from right outside doors, were the core of the city of Nagasaki. And most of these neighborhoods performing today in Okuchi really have something to do with boats. Some of them show whales or hunting whales as a theme. Some of them are about the Dutch, the others about the Chinese. They have a dragon dance, the Portuguese one, the Dosamachi one, and so on. And in Dejima, the site today, the story is told, and also people can kind of live it because they reconstructed the houses according to what they would be, or they presume they would be, around the late 18th century or beginning of 19th century. So they are basically Dejima at the end of the time in which it was used by the Dutch. We will only be able to grasp what the Namban Sen performance is by acknowledging that in participating in Okunchi, each neighborhood is paying their respects to the Shinto religion and to the Suwa Shrine and to the city of Nagasaki as an entity. So they are putting under the protection of the Suwa Shrine and the local government of Nagasaki city, and they are also paying their respects. This is their position, but within that position they want to show what they are, and they embody a particular story of Nagasaki, a particular point of view towards its history, its past, and what the city gained with being an open port to the outside. What makes them a legitimate part of the city, a part of the city that contributed to the progress and the modernization of Japan in the 16th century, is highlighted by their performance, and it's not shown at any point of this performance the part of the story about the persecution of the Christians or the hidden Christians or all the other terrible things that happened. They are focusing on the positive aspects of that interaction between the Portuguese and the Japanese. They are focusing on the positive aspects they themselves want to acknowledge that they embody. And because this is also an occasion to introduce historical content to the new generations, because they participate in, and then they have a memory about what it is participating. They not just dress this attire, they also have a sentimental memory of the historical content. And I will go back to that, which is having a fond and sentimental and positive memory and a physical attachment to a period of Japanese history. I will go back to that later when I talked about Tanegashima. Maybe not in this video, I don't think I would have time for that. The Portuguese flag we saw they were carrying in the performance at Shua Shrine was given to them, to the Dosamachi community, by the captain of a Portuguese ship from the navio Escola Sagres. They visited Nagasaki city in 2010, and this was a very important year. They are here posing very happily with the flag. This flag was used during the traveling around the globe by this ship, and then it was recognized by the Dosamachi community leader, and I'm quoting from the interview, by being a very special flag because it traveled along this ship with Portuguese sailors, and he traveled as many miles as from Portugal to Nagasaki, as like in the 16th century Namban traveling. So the importance of this flag was even greater for the Dosamachi community leader than it was expected by the captain of the ship. When he was giving them the flag, of course he knew he was giving them a symbol that they would cherish, but he could never imagine that for them the fact that this flag had been on a Portuguese boat traveling from Lisbon to Nagasaki was the main thing that made her special and made her worth enough to be presented at Suwa Shrine. It was a connection in which the members of the Dosamachi community could recognize themselves, so they could get the flag to be part of their own performance because of that. This year, 2010, the year in which navio Escola Sagres visited Nagasaki port, was very important, and they were received accordingly to the importance of that year. I've talked before, this was the year in which the 150th anniversary of a treaty between Portugal and Japan was celebrated. So, and this was a special way of celebrating that treaty, because although it was a treaty from 1860, the things that everything about the celebration was actually about the 400 and so anniversary of relation between Portugal and Japan. Though only the year of 2013 was used as a commemoration of the 470 years of relation, in fact 2010 was already a year of celebration because of everything they held both in Japan and in Portugal. So this picture is a band in the port of Nagasaki. The picture was taken from the boat. So when they got to the port, they were received by a band. They were also, in this picture, they were also received by the mayor and a bunch of journalists. And it was, I guess it was around 10 or 11 of August. It was really, really hot in the city of Nagasaki. The climate in Nagasaki in August is unbearable, but everyone was there. The place was crowded, and they gave this painting, this photograph of the boat in itself, to the mayor. And you can see this was both a formal occasion of receiving foreigners, but also a sort of welcome home to these foreigners that most of them have never been in Nagasaki. The captain had, but many of the crew didn't. And then there was kind of a party and a reception, and in this picture we can see it is highlighted by the arrows. We can see the Dosamachi community leader, the one we have we have seen in the part of the interview. And we can also see Teruko-san. Teruko was the secretary of incredible person, which was the father Diego Yuki, and he wrote a lot about the history of Nagasaki. He was from Latin America. He spoke Spanish, and he wrote mostly in Spanish, but also in Japanese. And she was her faithful secretary, and she also helped researching and translating a lot of things for him. So these two people are very important in the connection between those Amachi and the symbols of Portugal. And coincidentally or not, Teruko is also a Christian. Her Christian name is Sofia, though the Dotamachi community leader it's not. And these people also, they embody themselves a lot of the symbols that are acknowledged to be symbols of this part of the city of Nagasaki and their story with Portugal. In 2010, the Portuguese ambassador visited Nagasaki and saw with his own eyes the Okunchi. And he was placed in a balcony above to a shrine with a privileged point of view, and he was amazed because he didn't knew exactly what this performance was about. Usually political figures placed in by the Portuguese government in Japan are not aware of how deep the relation between Portugal and Japan actually is at a cultural, historical level and in terms of heritage. They are not aware that intangible heritage, meaning the non-material heritage, is a major source of interest in and research. So when they are placed in this position, when they go to some place and see these performances for the first time, they're usually very surprised. They sometimes say things that are superficial interpretations of it. But anyway, he was invited and he was placed in a privileged position. He was interviewed. Well, the media went crazy about this, and the community of those Amachi was above the clouds. They were really, really happy. They held this reception for him and for the ambassador's wife, and they were enthusiastically presenting themselves as humble, a humble Japanese community that just wanted to make sure that the history of the Portuguese presence in Nagasaki hadn't been forgotten and will never be forgotten, because they will make sure that the next generation knows about that, and they really want to perform this festival being faithful to the image of the Namban in Nagasaki and to the everything about the presence of the Portuguese in Nagasaki. So in their speech and in their behavior, they were truthfully, willingly to demonstrate the positive aspects of the relation between Portugal and Japan, and they were really happy that they were talking to a Portuguese official representative, a member of the Portuguese government, being an ambassador. So the fact that they had the captain of the ship, Navio Escola Sagres, and the Portuguese ambassador made 2010 a very special year for the celebration of the Namban Sen. The next year will be 2017. I hope I could be there to keep researching about this, but it largely depends on the foundings I've got. But this is not the point here. The point is that every time a special year like this comes back, every time you commemorate something, every time you have the visit of Portuguese people, especially if they are a captain of a ship and a Portuguese ambassador, so official visits, and they have to address themselves to these people. Every time this happens, they feel like they are pinpointing their century-long history with the relation with Portugal. So for them, it's like a scroll that you open in front of you, and they can see the whole thing. They can see the whole picture of these centuries, and they can see themselves as a significant part of the way the history of Nagasaki is connected to Portugal. And for them to be part of this, to be part of something so large, so spread in time, it's a really big deal. Next, I will present part of a video that was filmed in 2010, and this part of this video, this was a DVD that Dosamachi community commissioned to a private company, and I acquired the DVD and the permission to use it for educational purposes. The part I will show you is about how they train themselves in order to be able to perform the Namban. So these men that we already know that in the actual performance will dress with traditional yukata, Japanese dress, with the colors of the sea, and these men embody the waves, the foam, the ropes, and the movement of the boat. These men train all together in Nagasaki city for the last few months before Okunchi. Okunchi takes place in October, and they train all through the summer. Some of them, most of them, already trained in gymnasiums separately. So in late at night, all through July and August and September, they train with the actual boat. And it's not just them training how to move the boat, how to dance with it, how to turn it around. They also train the written, the chantings, the screamings, they train with the children already inside the boat, as you would be able to see. The place in which they train is right next to the port, because Dosamachi is very close to Tejima Island and very close to the port. And in the second part of this video, you will be able to see them training the position next to the staircase. I mean, next to the stair, it's not a staircase, it's a stair along a hill. So going up the hill to Suwa Shrine, it's demanding physically. It's a really tough job, and it's not just about strength and physical strength, it's also about positioning and rhythm and how they will manage the movement of the boat. Once the place is crowded, everything has to be according to the plan and nothing can fail. So they have to practice a lot in each location in which later on they will parade and stop and perform and continue the parade. Because they had to go to the Suwa Shrine, they had to perform in there, they have to go down the stairs again, and then they will have to parade and perform in many streets in Nagasaki area, but the main center. So in the second part of the video, when they are next to the Suwa Shrine stairs, I want you to notice also that they are using Portuguese words, contemporary Portuguese words. They are using the word Força and the word vamos. Força means strength, it's a noun. Vamos is a form of the verb to go, and it is literally let's go. So screaming or shouting Força and vamos means something like let's go, let's do it, we can do it, all together now. It's the equivalent of that. And the fact that they use the Portuguese words and they know exactly how to use it with the sense they have in Portuguese today, it's very significant. So, and from the beginning of, at least in this part that the film is about, they are using T-shirts that they made with the symbol of the Portuguese football team, but it's not exactly the football team T-shirt. It's not an official T-shirt of the Portuguese football team. It's a T-shirt that they customize for themselves because they have the symbol of the waves, the same symbol they have in the band they use in their heads. So they customize a T-shirt taking the symbol of the Portuguese football team, which by the way is the coat of arms of the Portuguese flag. So it's a very nationalist symbol, and an old one, by the way. It comes from the monarchy of Portugal. So they are using the cross because that symbol has a cross within it. It has a Christian value attached to it. They are using the cross and the coat of arms in their t-shirts. The color of the t-shirts is bright red. It's the same red as in the Portuguese flag. And they are training with those t-shirts all the time. They are actually the kind of uniform for them to train. And even the children in these practices, they have those t-shirts. So using those symbols in their own bodies, shouting the Portuguese words, everything makes them believe they are already performing the Namban Sen. It's kind of progressively approaching the state of mind in which they need to be once they are performing the Namban Sen in the actual Ogunchi. Next I will present the film. Just one last thing I want you to notice. Right in the beginning of the film you see the leader that trains everyone to the Namban Sen performance, shouting them words of motivation and explaining them what they need to do. Look at the sleeve of this man, because in the red t-shirt, in the sleeve of the red t-shirt, they also have another very important symbol with the connotation of the history of the Portuguese presence in Nagasaki, which is the symbol of the Jesuits order. It's IHS, which is and in itself, inside the circle, they also have a cross. So it's IHS and the cross inside a circle that it's like the sun because it has rays coming out of it. So the symbol of the Jesuits in the sleeve and the symbol of the cross and the coat of arms of Portugal directly in their chest, because it's above the chest in the t-shirts, are the most notorious symbols of antique imagery of the Portuguese monarchy or the missionaries traveling together with the Portuguese to Japan. The way in which this t-shirt was customized by the Dozamachi community is not completely clear to me. I know they made the design themselves. I know they tried to research about the symbols and what do they mean, so they are aware of what they are using. They want to use recognizable symbols, most of all. The recognition of them to be connected to the history of the Portuguese presence in Japan is fundamental. So having said that, I will just present the video.
その時がもうピーコンと疲れとってね、縦引きの上がってこんしね、もうずれとってさ。その時はもう尻からバーって2回半ぐらい回って逃げた方が切り替え跳ね逃げ。
階段落としでしょ。普通の逃げでこう落としすぎでしょ。
スネア、スネア、スネア、スネア。縦引きが4つになったら。
これがまだ
4つになったら喧嘩しよるもん。
ああ、ゲートがもう越えたら階段落としたね。後ろ止めてよ。
まで極端にはなっとらんて、それ骨ぶち当たりやっかそのことで。
でもちょっとこっち振っとったですよ。
いや、そこまでいって。
前に来て、センターここに合わせて。早くなってから3つ4つあったから、ハーバーみんなで出すことして、ハーバー出したらもうどんどんどこどこフォルサ、どんどんどこどこフォルサ。
In this video, we saw many different symbols attached to Portuguese nationality. They are Portuguese national symbols that are used by the Dosamachi community, not just in the actual performance of the Namban every 7 years in Opuchi festival, but also while they are rehearsing for that performance. So in the environment of the community, those symbols are not used in everyday basis, only related to the Namban. So they have a ritualistic use, and they are revalued within the community as they are integrated in their own symbols, as their own symbols. The rehearsals they held, especially during August, late at night, they are open, so everyone can go and see them rehearsing, but they're not shows in themselves. So it's not like they are performing for other people. They are just in a uniform to rehearse, because that's something that in Japanese culture they use very much. They use uniforms in order to people to feel part of a unity, part of the activity in itself, and also part of the group. So this is not uniform to the show in itself, is to the performance. Another thing I want to emphasize here, beside the use of Portuguese national symbols in their own performances, is the fact that they invited the ship, Navio Escola Sagres, and they invited the Portuguese ambassador in the year 2010. So they were the ones that took the initiative not just to bring into their own performance these symbols and customize the t-shirts and construct the boat and everything. They were the ones that also invited the Portuguese representatives to be present during the Okonchi of 2010. So the initiative always comes from them, from the Dosamachi community, and it's part of them performing for themselves and for the rest of the people of Nagasaki their own history, their own identity. And I mean, this is a neighborhood. It's not even the identity of a city. It's literally the identity of a small part of the city of Nagasaki. Of course, they could only have invited an ambassador and made contact with the commandant of Portuguese official ship and take care of all the issues related acquiring knowledge about these symbols through another intermediary. I would like to emphasize that the Portuguese government, Portuguese cultural associations, institutions, and so on, they had nothing to do with this. But anyway, there is in Nagasaki an association which is called the Portuguese-Japanese Association, and the headquarters of that association is within a bank, so a financial institution. This bank is the 18th bank, that's the name of it. It's one of the oldest banks in Japan. It's the 18th bank once the financial system was created in the Meiji era. And the 18th Bank of Nagasaki was founded by wealthy merchant of the city that is somewhat, by its family, connected to the merchant class of Nagasaki for a long time ago. And the building of the 18th Bank is right next to the building, is very, very close to the building where the headquarters of the Tozamachi community is, because they have their own organization and they have a place for collecting the photographs, the films, and doing the meetings and everything. So they have a place of their own. And this Portuguese-Japanese Association, with its headquarters inside the 18th Bank, it's very, very close, is within the Tozamachi area. And it was also the place where the honorary consulate of Portugal was established in the city of Nagasaki. The honorary consulate of Portugal was established by the Portuguese government, and it was given to one of the managers of the 18th Bank. Eventually, this was extinguished, so there is no more honorary consulate of Portugal in Nagasaki, only in Kobe, for instance. And the fact that they were granted the honor to be one of the honorary consulates of Portugal gave them even more strength to incorporate symbols of Portuguese nationality. It's not that they wanted to be Portuguese, just that they feel like symbols, imagery coming from the Portuguese official national symbols granted them more legitimacy in order to be themselves within the context of Nagasaki as a bunch of different neighborhoods with different influences, not just in the country, but all through the year. So the consulate was extinguished, but within the 18th Bank, the building, they have a room which is an exhibition room, and in which they tell the story of the Portuguese-Japanese Association. They have in that bank different associations, because they perceive these associations as a way to understand the culture of different countries, the language, the culture, the story of different countries, and then in order to pursue connections within the financial world system to those countries. So they have different associations, but they have a special room, an exhibition room for the Portuguese-Japanese Association. And in this room, they tell the story of the association. They have these panels, they have the many data, actually, more than in some archives and museums, many data about the old city of Nagasaki. You can see in this map, they pinpoint the different points in which the Portuguese had churches or established themselves somehow. And they also have a replica of a Namban byobo. This is actually a replica of a byobo that exists in Osaka Bunkakan that we have seen already. So they have material in this association to reconstruct the imagery of the Namban Jin in Nagasaki. And they told me in the interview that they actually went to this exhibition room in order to see from close look onto the attire that they need to create to the people in the performance, and to the ship and everything. So they use the resources that this association has in order to create what they need to the performance, and they use the services of the association to help them get in touch to the Portuguese embassy in order to get the ambassador to go there. They have a very close relation with this association. When they get the chance to, they invite actual Portuguese people to be part of the Namban performance. So we've noticed that they integrate the symbols in their clothes, in their uniforms. They shout Portuguese words. Somehow they learn these words in Portuguese, though they never had a coach to teach them Portuguese language, and they are not fluent in Portuguese. Besides that, they also invite Portuguese people when they get the chance to. In this picture, we see that, well, some Westerners, obviously, they are Westerners, are part of the parade, and they are dressed like Namban. The Japanese ladies are dressed in their kimonos, but the Portuguese ladies that were invited to join this year, which was 1996, they had the whole Namban suit. It's not a suit they had themselves. One of these people I met, she now lives in Tanegashima Island, and she worked for the consulate, and she taught Portuguese language in Nagasaki until the position was extinguished, and then she chose to remain and living in Japan. And she told me she was invited to join the performance, and she was really happy because they told her she will be wearing a 16th century outfit, and she was glad. Oh, I will look like a princess. But when she arrived in Nagasaki, actually what they had for her was a Namban suit like this one. So you see, even in terms of trying to put, this is almost a funny story, but the point here is that every time they can, they try to do their performance as much as a real action, as much as a real scene taken from the 16th century, at the point of inviting Portuguese people to take part in the performance and to make them dress like Namban, even though they were women in this case. And they didn't have to carry the Namban, by the way. They just had to join the parade. And also, they weren't inside the bows playing. Those were the parts of the children. So they created different ways in which they could interact with the parade. This presentation is longer than the other ones, and I don't want to annoy you anymore with this. But you must realize by now that my fieldwork in Japan was was fruitful. I have a lot of material to work upon. The difficulty is to work with all this material in Portugal, because there's no there's not an academic environment to acknowledge these issues. But anyways, I think this is important to understand how one community in Nagasaki City show the foreigners, tell the story of the foreigners that arrive there and change their story, the personal stories and the story of the nation. This community is in fact telling the story of the nation through their own eyes, through the perspective of their own community. They are focusing on certain aspects which are the positive ones, and they are disregarding things like the persecution to the Christians. They are attached to the idea of parade and to the idea of performance that comes from the Namban Biobo, the folding screens, which was the whole point of the first presentation, the Velvet Cape, and also a little bit of the second presentation, Boats and Bodies. So you see, this third presentation is heavier in terms of information and content and theoretical points of view, but it's also a way to understand that I'm trying to interpret this in the point of view that I could use in my PhD. And because I need to discuss these matters with people that are interested in them, they could be scholars or amateurs or just people that like to talk about this, please look at the other presentations as well if you haven't looked yet, and write and comment, and please be free to leave your own point of view about this. Maybe something that you ask or some comment that you make actually helps me to see other things that I haven't seen so far. So thank you very much for watching, and I hope I will be able to do another presentation soon.